What's up, guys? So, I hope you liked the little riffing in the beginning. Some nice metal guitar playing. Might make it into a song one day, as we all say. This video, I just want to talk about metal guitar playing. And the style of video I want to keep going for is just a conversation. Some of these ramblings might make sense. You might get something out of it. You just might happen to get something out of it. Some of you may hate this, and you know what? That's up to you to hate it. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try for you guys. So, metal guitar playing. What can we say about it? What makes a great metal guitar tone? I remember when I first started out, I felt like the more gain, the better. That was kind of the mantra. I got my Spider 3 amp, and I was just so happy when I first got that thing. And it was like only $100, so it was like a nice budget thing. You got a bunch of effects, you had a bunch of different gains on it. But I remember I would always just gravitate to that insane channel and cranking the gain up. And I really liked the treble because it had that choppy, sound, which to me sounded aggressive. I always kind of liked the aggressive stuff because I grew up on, Bullet for My Valentine stuff, so they had the real, Metallica-esque, choppy tones where a lot of down pickings involved, things like that. And like when I first started, that was cool. But as you mature as a musician, you start to figure out what tone sounds better, and then you get to 3 years of playing and you're like, I'm the best guitar player ever. And then you get 10 years later and you realize all that was nonsense, and then you really learn what good tone is. So through all this time, what have I noticed what good guitar tone is? For one, for metal, you're going to want to turn that gain way down. The Spider 3 days, they're gone with the wind. We're going to want to go with a lower gain setting. Obviously, genres like death metal, where you have like that sludgier, just wall of sound gain, it's a little different. But obviously, everyone has their preferences, and you got to just find what you like in your genre that you're playing. So for me, I can only really say from my experience. So like, what I like is that chainsaw kind of feel, the metalcore tones, but I also like the percussiveness of the djent stuff. And combining those two things together for me has kind of led me in a range of a happy medium of gain. Not like too dry of gain to where you feel like you don't have any like of that liquid compression under your fingers where it doesn't feel super hard to play. I like to have just like a little bit more gain, but not too much to where when you pick, your dynamics are going to be lost. And I guess the question is, you have to ask yourself what you're trying to do in terms of your music you write and what sound you're trying to go for. So the overall advice I would say is definitely lower the gain, because the benefits these have is, like I was saying before, your dynamics and your picking are going to be picked out way more, and just the sound of your picking with how you angle your pick, just that is going to give a different sound. And if you have loads and loads of gain, these things are going to be a lot harder to pick up, and they're going to be lost. And the thing with metal guitar playing in general, there's a lot of fast stops, and just in most styles of playing, there's a lot of fast stops and choppiness to it, to where having high gain is going to, for one, give you feedback live, or even in your studio room or wherever you play. it's going to give you a lot of feedback, and the results are not going to be very good. And the thing I'd also recommend too is always record yourself playing if you're still lost about how good your tone actually is. If you can get a DAW and start recording yourself playing to, drums, bass, and learning how the guitar actually fits within the spectrum of like a song, that's going to give you a lot better direction than not recording yourself at all. Because when you're just playing, you're not really listening to what you're actually playing. You're kind of reacting to how the tone feels. You're not listening to the actual full, spectrum of the sound. So recording yourself, putting it with drums and bass, and seeing how that plugs in, you're gonna notice real fast that your tone is not very good. If it's that far off, you're gonna learn it's not very good really fast. Because if you have like a lot of bass in your tone, you're gonna notice that the mix is gonna sound muddy immediately. If you have a lot of mids in your tone, you're gonna notice it's gonna sound too boxy, like it's just in its own world compared to the other instruments. And if you don't have enough, then it's gonna sound like it's thin and not even making an impact in the song either. So recording yourself ultimately is gonna be the way to do it. So we talked about having, a modest amount of gain. You can have a little more gain. Like there's players like John Petrucci where I know he plays with like the gain set to where he just barely touches the string and it makes a noise. And that's kind of how those Majesty guitars are set up too. I used to have one and I kind of sold it for that reason. But yeah, there's just different, ultimately there's just different ways to get the tone that you're desired. It's not like a one-way book is what we need to really realize here. But like if we're going like in the middle, if I could give an all-around advice, less gain is better. You're going to want to record yourself to hear how it actually sounds in relations to other instruments. And yeah, that's like where I would start. Now, in terms of like gear to use, if you are playing properly with good technique, finding the right tone with gear is going to be like not nearly as hard as it would be if you have a lot of flaws in your technique and you're just trying to find something that sounds good. Because I remember when I first started playing guitar, I would have a hard time finding like this specific amp or tone that I felt like was good for my playing. I felt like my playing had to be like in this box of a certain tone, to where now I feel like I can go through most rigs and I'll be pretty fine. So why is this? Why fundamentally does it feel like your tone is in a box of what you can play through? And like I was just saying, it's going to be your technique. The thing is about your technique you're going to want to look at, obviously, is, for one, how accurate is your left hand being? Is it in sync with your right hand? And how strong is your left hand? And how strong is your right hand? If they're not in sync and you can't get things timed perfectly, having more gain is just going to make it sound sloppier. It's going to feel better playing. It's going to feel better playing when you have, higher gain and you're still out of sync. It's going to seem like it sounds better to you, but it's like once you lower that gain and, you're not in sync, you're going to notice real fast that it just doesn't sound good. But a lot of us will be like, oh, this just isn't the right tone, or the tone isn't right. It's not my rig or not my guitar. I feel like when we, first start out or, we're on our journey, we kind of will blame gear for the reasons we're not playing as well. So that's why we need to go to the fundamentals of actual technique and making sure we're actually playing in time with your left and right hand. So now that we have like the fundamental of that, we're going to want to look at the certain techniques that help metal tones, be, that aggressive metal tone we all want. And the one thing I've really found and, pioneers like Metallica always do, like James Hetfield, is down picking. Down picking should be like your bread and butter of riffing. Anywhere you can down pick, definitely try to down pick. And the thing about down picking is it's like a muscle. If you don't use it and you don't practice it, it will go away. Like, it will not stick around for you. So down picking every day is going to be key. And just playing, you can even like create like exercises to improve it and just try to do it for like 10 minutes straight, playing like a certain riff or something like that. And doing these things with like a drum groove or a metronome is going to be beneficial. Just trying to work out that right hand picking technique and keeping it going as long as you can. Because if you're playing live with a band, you can't have your stamina just burn out. Like James Hetfield just cranks out long sets with just down picking the whole time. It's pretty insane. Like, he has definitely the god, the right hand of a god. But yeah, to wrap it up, down picking is going to be crucial for solid metal tones. And I know this video is a little bit of a ramble. I want to get better at doing these, and hopefully you find nuggets of inspiration. I kind of want to have it almost like a podcast form, something like that. But overall, I just want to implement little nuggets of information from just my experiences of things that I have done through my journey of playing as a guitar player that may help you or not, because some of these things people have never even heard of doing. Some people, depend completely on alternate picking or don't really practice their down picking and, know what to focus on when it comes to these things or know about recording yourself. So I guess I'm just going to try to wrap this video up as a whole. What can we start off with is the amount of gain. We can try not to have too much gain so you don't lose your picking dynamics. Number 2, try to record yourself as much as possible so you can hear the actual tone and know where it lies within a mix of a band. Obviously, your recording tone in your DAW of like trying to make a song that sounds good is going to be a little different than playing with like a live band, because there's going to be a whole lot of different frequencies. But try to record, just your band too, playing live, to see how that sounds all blended in together. See the other guitar player and make sure you have a harmonious tone together. What else? Technique. That was the other thing. Make sure your hands are in sync. Practice your timing with a drum groove. I'd recommend more over a metronome, because playing ahead or slightly behind the beat can create different effects. And I feel like you can practice that a little bit better with a drum loop rather than just a ticking of a metronome. But metronome's obviously always a really good thing to use. And then down picking, because you'll have way more control over the dynamics in your pick with just angling and, how hard the note comes out, and having that low gain is really going to showcase that. And I guess the final word of advice I would say too is something I didn't really learn for a while, which this Evertune actually stops, is don't pick too hard. Just because you pick harder doesn't mean the tone is more brutal. Like, this is like the last thing. And I used to make this mistake way back, and like I'll hear myself now, I'd be like, man, why did I do that? So when you pick too hard, what happens to the note is, instead of it just being like a D of just hitting the note, perfectly in tune, if you hit it softer, it should be just like a perfect D. If you hit it too hard, that D will sharpen, and the pitch of the actual note will get, screwed up. And so if you're like trying to like record yourself and you want like a big opening or whatever, and you just strum it as hard as you can because you think the attack will be crazy sounding, the pitch of all the strings are just going to be going way out of whack, and it's going to the note's going to dip up and then resolve into the actual pitch. So don't try to pick too hard. But dynamics like that, though, can be implemented if you do it purposefully. Just having that slight little, you know, just the slight out of tune can actually add some character to your tone. So don't be too afraid to do that. But like I said, record yourself, listen to how these things sound, look for these little variables with your gain, your pick attack, and just adding little characteristics, your timing, your technique. Just look through all of that. And the thing I've noticed with tone too is you shouldn't be messing with the knobs too much with like the treble, mids, and bass, stuff like that. Try not to mess with those too much. It's not going to improve your gain a lot, at least until you start getting some experience with how it sounds within a band setting, and then you can kind of see how each frequency adds. Like more mids is going to make you stand out more and be a little more boxy. More treble is going to be a little more attack, but too much of these frequencies is going to make it sound weird. So just starting baseline everything at 12 o'clock in any rig you have is probably going to be better than you messing with it if you don't quite know what you're doing. But yeah, I guess that's it for the video, guys. I hope some of these nuggets of little information that I've spat out have led somewhere. But I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. See you guys.